Hi, I'm Karen. We're here at Montevilla Sewing Center, and today we're talking about the Pfaff Quilt Ambition 630. In this video, I'm going to show you the accessories that come with this machine. To start with, we have the pedal, and the pedal is the go button for the machine. You press on this with your foot, and that makes it go faster or slower or stop, depending on how you move your foot. Then we have the manual, and this is the user's guide, and it's really useful. Now this it shows both the 630 and the 620, and it will tell you on the pages. This happens to be the 630 machine. Over here we have the hard cover. This is a nice hard protective cover. It's also good for keeping the dust off your machine. And you would put it on like that. Normally, of course, you turn off your machine. It's got a nice tight fit because it's got styrofoam on the inside. Now, this is how the handle comes right through here, and so this is how you would lift your machine. This is the handle that's on your machine, so the cover fits kind of like a cape does on your shoulders. Let's put that off to one side there like that. And then we're going to talk about some of the smaller accessories that we have. By the way, for storing your accessories in your machine, you have the front here. This is where you put your most used accessories, like maybe your seam ripper or, the most used accessories. And then in the back here, you can put the lesser used accessories. So it's got some nice storage there. Okay, so over here, we have the Spool Net. And this would be for specialty threads that you use that tend to want to spill off the spool just by sitting there. Okay, so a specialty thread would be maybe like something like this, where it would tend to be kind of slickery. But for regular sewing, you wouldn't normally need this. It's just there if you need it. And then over here, we have a guide. Now this guide is good for sewing parallel lines of stitching. I'll show you right here. See, we got parallel lines of stitching. So you'd guide it so that after you sew your first line of stitching, you'd have your guide follow that first line of stitching to sew your second line of stitching. Well, let me show you how this goes on your machine. Over here behind the presser foot holder is a little screw that you can loosen, put the guide bar right in there, and then tighten it down. So you can tighten it down and make it however wide or narrow you want to get those parallel lines of stitching. And then once you're done using that, take it out, tighten that little screw down. This finger tight is sufficient. Okay, over here we have spool caps. Now for your smaller diameter of spools, you'd use your smaller spool cap. For your larger diameter of spools, you'd use your larger spool cap. The spool cap can be also accommodate the middle-sized spools. I'm thinking like your Gutermann. Some of your Gutermann spools are they're not huge, but they're not the tiniest ones, so this would be great for that. Then we have these felt. The felt is for if you're using an upright spool pin. I'll show you this. You can actually have your regular spool pin sit upright like this. And that would be for your specialty threads. Some of them wind off the spool a little bit easier if you have the spool upright. So you'd put this on here like this, and then you'd put your felt right there. The purpose of this felt is to keep the spool from continuing to spin once you stop sewing. It kind of acts as a little brake. So you've also got an auxiliary spool pin right there. And then so you can have two spools of thread sewing for twin needle sewing. Now what's twin needle sewing? That's what this is here. I'll show you. Look at that. So nice decorative stitches that you can make with two needles. That's a special type of needle that you would use, and there are settings on your machine to show how you, depending on the distance between the two needles, so you can do stitches like this. Okay, that's twin needle sewing. And I'll take an auxiliary spool pin back off of there for now, and these extra things like that. And of course, when you're done sewing, you'd put this down like that. All righty. Then we have the multi-purpose tool. Now, the multi-purpose tool is good for, see, there's thinner and thicker. This would be good for sewing over those jean seams. So you've hemmed your jeans, and you get to that thick flat fill seam, and the presser foot just doesn't want to get over that. You'd put this behind your presser foot. See how the presser foot tends to rock? You'd put it behind your presser foot, lower this down, and it keeps your presser foot level while it's going over that thick jean seam. Also, a really neat feature of this is it's got a, right here, this part here is where you would put your needle in to insert your needle. So this acts like a handle for putting your needle into your machine. Really nice tool that way. Okay, then we have screwdrivers. This little guy is a screwdriver, and this is nice and short for undoing these screws here, and I showed you in my maintenance video how to use this screwdriver to loosen these screws to take off the needle plate and clean your machine. You've also got a longer screwdriver, and this is nice for taking your needle clamp screw or tightening it nice and tight. You've got a little more torque this way. You can also use this screwdriver for your needle clamp as well. Then we've got the seam ripper. Now the seam ripper is for taking out stitches that you don't want, maybe removing basting or something like that. It's also really good for cutting the buttonhole. So once you've cut a button or sewn a buttonhole, you can open that buttonhole using the seam ripper. Now I like to put the cover on the end of the seam ripper because it gives me a little bit more to hang on to. Plus, when you set this down, it's not going to roll away. Okay, and then once you're done using your seam ripper, make sure you close it back up. This is your cleaning brush. Now, in my maintenance video, I showed how to take off the cover of the needle plate and clean underneath there, but that's what the brush is for. Then we have extra bobbins. Now you have one bobbin that comes in your machine, so you have multiple bobbins, but if you get another bobbin or more bobbins, make sure you get the same kind in size. This is a class 15 plastic bobbin. Just make sure you're not using bobbins from an old machine or a machine that has a wider or rounded, different configuration of bobbin. It needs to be the same kind to get the best sewing results. Now the feet, one of the feet comes on your machine. This is your 0A foot, it's your all-purpose foot. Over here, this foot, the 1A foot, and the numbers are right here, 1A, that is very similar to the all-purpose foot, but the difference is on the back it has this channel, and the channel allows you to sew thick stitches. An example of that would be the decorative stitches that I've got in here. Those stitches put a lot of thread into the fabric, and so you want something where those stitches can flow right on through. Okay. Then we also have the 2A foot. The 2A foot is like the 1A foot, but you can see there's a difference right back here. This foot is the one that you can use with your IDT, which is your walking foot that's built onto your machine. This one, you cannot use your IDT. So if a particular stitch calls for this foot, the 2A foot, this is the one you'd use, and you disconnect or disengage your walking foot before putting this on your machine. Most of the feet that you have with your that come as an accessory with your machine have space for your walking foot. Now this is your zipper foot. It has 2 slots for your walking foot. The reason for that is you can put it on either side, either the right side or the left side of the foot, so that you can sew evenly and nice and close to those zipper teeth if that's what you want to do. And then we have the buttonhole foot. Now the buttonhole foot makes nice, consistently sized buttons depending on the size of the button that you put in the little holder back here. And the machine will read that and give you a nice buttonhole. So, different video on how to make buttonholes, but at least that's the foot that you would use. And over here we have the blind hem foot. Now blind hem looks like this. Blind hem is where, now on this thin fabric, and I've used a contrast thread, you can just barely see those little stitches, but if I had a busy print, those stitches would be invisible. That's what a blind hem is. And this is the foot that you would use. Now there's another really neat feature about this foot where you can overcast the edge of your fabric. Now if you have a woven fabric, you're going to need to overcast the edge before you flip up your hem and do your blind hem. Overcasting is usually done with a zigzag. And zigzag can tend to scrunch up the edge of your fabric if you just use your regular foot. But using the blind hem foot, if you look really carefully, you can see there's a little wire right there. If you use your zigzag and adjust the width wide enough, the zigzag will go on either side of that wire, creating a little bit of slack in your thread so that you end up with a nice flat edge that's not going to show when you press up that hem. So this is a nice multi-purpose one. Another neat thing about this foot is that you can also use it for doing like a top stitch at the edge of a collar or cuff, and you can adjust this little guide here to make it flow right along the edge of the cuff or collar that you're doing and give you a nice consistent distance between the stitching line and the edge of your collar or cuff. So wonderful tool that way. Then we have your 1/4-inch piecing foot. Now the 1/4-inch piecing foot, if you run as you're sewing, guide the edge of your fabric right along the edge of the foot right here, and your needle, assuming you have needle, center needle position, you got to make sure that you're just stitching right down the middle. I haven't moved your needle. This is going to give you that perfect 1/4-inch seam that quilters love for their quilt piecing. Inside here, if you run the edge of your fabric next to that, it'll give you an 1/8 inch seam. So sometimes you may want an 1/8 inch seam allowance. And these little lines here are really useful if you want to start right on the edge. You can do that. Just line the edge of your fabric up with this that goes right next to the needle. This here, if you want to start or stop right at the like 1/4 inch before the edge of your fabric, you can do that. Or if you want to start in a 1/4 inch, that's what those lines are back there. Really useful this way. Okay, in the middle here, we've got, this is our free motion quilting foot. This goes on to your machine, and then you would drop your feed dogs, and the way that this works, this little thing here fits over your needle bar, and as you're sewing, when the needle lifts up, this lifts up, and you can move your fabric along. So I'll show you what free motion quilting looks like. This is my example of free motion quilting, and this is just some little doodling I did with free motion quilting. So you're moving your fabric around with your hands as you're going, and that's what this is for right here. Then, last but not least, we have our Inspira brand needle set. Now this is a needle set that comes as an accessory with your machine, so it's got a variety of needles in it. You have 3 different sizes of your universal needle. Universal is something that you use for most general sewing. Then you've got a jeans needle. Now that is got some blue on it, so that kind of helps you remember that it's blue jeans needle. It's got an extra sharp point on it that helps get through that thick denim. Also good for canvas. Then you've got your stretch needle. The stretch needle is good for most knits, but especially good for any knit that has lycra in it. And a lot of your knits have a little bit of lycra to give it some lengthwise as well as crosswise stretch. This is an excellent needle for that because it will help prevent skipped stitches. Now these numbers down here at the bottom have to do with the size of the needle. The smaller the number, the smaller the needle. The larger the number, the larger the needle. Now here is 70, 80, 90, 90 and 90. Those are the European numbers. Sometimes you'll see a needle set with both 10 and 70 on it, or 12 and 80. That means the 12, the 10, 12, 14, 16, that's the American numbers. Some brands of needle only have the American numbers, but just know that 12 always goes with 80, 14 always goes with 90, and so forth. Now, Inspira is a great brand to use with your Pfaff machines. They kind of go together, Inspira and Pfaff. It's not that you can't use other brands like Schmetz or Classe, but Inspira will give you the best results. So that's our accessories for this machine. There are other accessories that you can buy to help customize it for your particular kind of sewing. And we could help you with that here at Montevilla. If you have questions, come on in or give us a call. If this video was helpful to you, give us a thumbs up. And if you have comments or questions, you can leave those in the area down below. We have other videos on this machine and lots of videos on other machines here at Montevilla and on our YouTube channel. So, thanks for watching. We'll see you later. Bye.